President Nixon declared the war on cancer, but many decades later, that war is still being fought. So today we will discuss exactly why the war on cancer will never be won. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. I want to get into this information today, as well as to get into some positive news for once. But let's begin with this right here, as cancer drug spending tops $100 billion, up 10% in a year. So that's a new milestone for 2014 of $100 billion. That's up 10% from 2013 and $75 billion 5 years earlier. So there is much profit to be made for the pharmaceutical companies. And of course, this goes all down the line of everyone who's interconnected with those pharmaceutical companies and the individuals who require these treatments. So we need to follow the money, whether it's the financial system or the political system, look for the campaign contributions. We need to really dig into this and find out where the incentives are at. But hold that thought for a moment. Let's move on to this here. The cancer factory operates on money and lots of it. So we're looking at about 1.6 million cancer cases and 585,000 cancer deaths in the US alone in a year. So just imagine that. And then we look, there are more statistics here. I just want to cover a few. The typical new cancer drug coming onto the market a decade ago cost about $4,500 per month. Since 2010, the median price has been around $10,000. Two new cancer drugs that cost more than $35,000 each per month of treatment. So if an individual has to go through 6 months or a year of treatment, these costs certainly add up. Now, if they don't have healthcare, they're going to be in big trouble. If they do have healthcare that's paid for them, perhaps in Canada or the UK or where have you, we have a situation that basically puts a larger burden upon the government because they have to continue to increase the amount of spending that they allocate to healthcare. This is obviously a problem when the GDP of these particular nations isn't growing as fast as the economy should be, obviously becoming a huge burden. There are much more details in this article here, essentially trying to show you that, in fact, the cancer industry is extremely profitable. Let's look into this article written by the writers of Freakonomics and Super Freakonomics, a great light book, or two great light books if you want to read those. The profit motive is certainly a factor. Doctors have incentives. So, oncologists are among the highest paid doctors, their salaries increasing faster than any other specialists. And they typically derive more than half of their income from selling and administering chemotherapy drugs. So think about that for a second as I repeat this. They typically derive more than half of their income from selling and administering chemotherapy drugs. So their house, their car, all of their essentials for life are all paid for by giving these patients their drugs. So what are the incentives here then to give these people the drugs? What are they really up to? Are they always really in need of these so-called therapies? Or perhaps could they wind back on these and not necessarily give them to everybody or give them right away? Just wanted to make a note that if the cancer took 10 years or 20 years to develop, it may not necessarily be so urgent as they always claim that it is. That's all I wanted to know for this. There is so much more information in this here, but not willing to get into the details of that. Let's begin with this out of The Guardian. The number of people in their 40s and 50s being afflicted by strokes is soaring, with obesity and sedentary lifestyles to be behind the rise. There is much going on here, but we see that it is not just cancer, but it's strokes, it's heart attacks, it's everything that is in fact getting worse. This is a sad indictment of the nation's health. So we have these statistics here, more in this article here, but I'm going to move on. Looking at the Telegraph, the cost of healthy living soars in the developing world while junk food gets cheaper. And basically what it's trying to suggest here is that if you want to live healthy, you got to spend more money. But if you want to eat cheap garbage, well, then it's getting cheaper. What's happening here is that you have things being created out of test tubes. You have so-called food being grown, and it is not being grown in the conventional ways. Now, what exactly am I talking about? Well, look at this article out of the Washington Post. This is the future of meat. from the petri dish to the plate. They're actually able to create cultured meat from the muscle tissue harvested from cows. So soon you won't be getting a burger that's derived from a cow directly. They didn't just cut the piece off and send it onto your plate. They're now going to be growing it from a test tube, and this is in fact a better way to do it. They suggest that they're going to cause a lot less pollution by doing so, and that is such a big factor with all of this so-called climate change that is taking place. This will be better, it will be healthier, and this is going to be, as they suggest, the future of meat. I can't even believe this, but they have created it, and they said, hey, tastes pretty similar, let's go for it. So they're going to find a way to do this on a mass scale, and it is in the works right now as we speak. Then we move on to this here out of Fox News. Small radioactive leak detected at Japan's Fukushima nuclear plant. A small quantity of radioactive water has leaked from a storage tank. Well, it's just a small amount. This is what they suggest, that it's always just a small amount. This has been, in fact, leaking from Fukushima since it occurred. There has never been a stoppage in this leak. It has been going off into the atmosphere. It's been leaking into the ocean, and nobody's really saying anything anymore. It's sort of just swept under the rug, all because it is not really on the front page news anymore, and that is simply how it works. As long as it's not on the front page news, it really isn't news anymore, despite the fact that this is extremely dangerous and affecting the lives of everyone in the world. In my free ebook right here, I talked about the fluoridation problem that we have. Of course, the government suggests that they fluoridate the water supply, whether for good reasons or bad reasons. They say that they fluoridate the water supply. So what you're thinking is that they're putting in sodium fluoride. That's what your dentist will tell you. That's what the general mainstream media will tell you. But unfortunately, if you look this up for yourselves, you will find that they are using fluosilicic acid in most cases. This right here is, in fact, a toxic waste byproduct of the phosphate industry. They basically take this from the smokestack scrubbers and they scrape it off and put it into all these big containers. And from these big containers, they then sell them to the municipal water supplies all around the world. This is what goes into our water. It's similar to fluoride in a way, but of course it is not the same fluoride that is sodium fluoride, and definitely not the same fluoride that exists in nature. So this is what we have. This is why we need to understand the deeper truths and the deeper meanings beyond what we are being told. One point that I wanted to note from this is that when you mass medicate, as they do, you cannot control the dosage. A very, very serious problem. If you want to see this free ebook, they're always down in my description below of the videos. There's one on fluoride, one on genetically modified food, and others, so take a look there. U.S. lowers fluoride levels in drinking water for the first time in 50 years. This article is out of The Guardian, and finally, we have some positive news. And anytime we do, I like to bring it here. And what we are seeing here is that they actually lowered the level to 0.7 parts per million, because they're saying, finally admitting, that too much fluoride is a common cause of white splotches on the streaks on the teeth. So what we have here is an admission to what they have been saying now for quite some time. They knew this all along, but at least they're finally willing to admit that. This is a victory, a small one, but it is definitely a victory, and we need to celebrate it. We also have this article out of the AP. Hawaii groups plant coconut trees, protest against Monsanto. So this is another good piece of information here where they wanted to protest. And how do they protest? Well, they planted coconut trees and waved their signs. This is a peaceful protest. This is what needs to be done all around the world. In fact, that we need to demonstrate peacefully in your own ways and do this against the big agribusiness that is Monsanto. Don't buy things that have genetically modified food. If you're worried about Monsanto, if you're concerned about genetically modified food, don't buy their food. That's a simple matter of fact. If you found this video informative, please give me a thumbs up. And last but not least, if you found this informative, I know that you will find my book, The Money GPS, even more informative. And you can actually look through the book. If you go to Amazon, they have a look inside feature, and you can actually flip through the book on there and see if you like it for yourself. Take care.